what are your, instead of the earliest memory, I want to ask you a fondest memory of Asia Society Hong Kong.
I think that is a real hard question to answer, just because there are so many memories from the early days till recently, all the excellent programs, and I guess the wide variety of programming, certainly, I guess I could characterize, if nothing else, as a fond memory. Whether it's art, talks, movie screenings, which I've been here, and of course, all this is, I think, re-emphasized by the beautiful surroundings of the center.
Okay. And I know we give you credit for helping to identify the former British military site as a possible, home for Asia Society Hong Kong. And tell us how this came about, because we've heard it from different versions, heard it from Ronnie, but I'm just curious, from your memory, how did we get here in this beautiful site? And Jack has mentioned you, Mary Lee has mentioned you, Ronnie has mentioned you, but I want to now hear from you. Okay. How did we get here?
So first of all, as I've always told everybody, I get too much credit for identifying the site, but I remember when, I think it was both Jack and Mary Lee, and maybe even Ronnie, mentioned that they had happened upon the site. I vividly remembered that it would be a good place, because I actually I traveled Kennedy Road, which bounds the site in a U shape every day to and from my school. And so I had a sense of how large the site was and what kind of perspective it might have looking into the harbor. Certainly it was, actually, it was only then that I found out that the site was owned by the British military and that there was an explosive magazine here. Because when I was young and traveling back and forth on the road above, oftentimes there would be gongs banging away, stopping traffic. In those days, that usually meant explosives, but explosives in terms of taking down hills and mountains for building. I never dreamt that they were just experimenting, blowing up, experimenting on explosives. So that was very interesting. So again, as I said, I don't think I really found the site, but I certainly was able to confirm that that would be a good place to put this incredible facility.
So do you remember when you first saw it, as a site coming in? My understanding from Billy and Todd and others saying it was just a jungle, literally.
Yes.
Kind of like
it was an abandoned site.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So when you first came in, I'm sure there were a lot more bugs than now. But when did you first walk into the site?
It was I think it was either with Billy and Todd, or probably before that, when Jack and Mary Lee and Ronnie and I decided, okay, let's try for this. After which they had to go to the Hong Kong government, and try to get them to give the site to the Asia Society for a nominal rent. And even then, it was totally abandoned, and everything was in ramshackle state. But I have to say, I was not with Jack when he trespassed, climbing into the site. I walked into this with the door open.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that. But you also, I know you're on the board of trustees of Asia Society Hong Kong before, and you were also advisory council members now, doing the site's construction. And what are your memories of that time? How has it seen the site transform? How we're seeing the site completion for you? I mean, when did you see it? You've seen the journey of this building.
Right. The most memorable was indeed the process of the architectural selection, the selection of the architects, where we had 3 firms from around the world, one from Spain, one from the US, and one from Japan, competing on the conceptual design. That was true. It was quite hard to decide, but fortunately we had some architectural experts to assist us, and I think the result speaks for itself. Of course, we all know that Billy and Todd have gone on to design award-winning museums and other public spaces. So I hope they are also very proud of what they've created here. And it was stunning. I think after seeing, when I saw it when the center opened, I think it certainly exceeded my expectations, having seen some of the drawings and the artist renderings as well as the model that they built and brought to us.
Great. My understanding from Ronnie was your father, Mr. Chien Lee, was one of the founders of Asia Society Hong Kong, along with Sir QWB and others. And do you recall what was his initial version for Asia Society Hong Kong? We were founded in 1990, celebrating our 30th this year. Can you recall that, his involvement with Asia Society Hong Kong in the beginning?
Yes. So I believe that his involvement in the project probably started with his association with Asia Society in New York, where he and my Uncle Harold both, I think, are on the donor wall to the Park Avenue building. And from there, I think he learned about the Asia Society, and therefore, after 1983, when it was clear that Hong Kong would be returned to China, and there was a lot of concern that this idea of bringing an internationally recognized organization to Hong Kong and have it establish a center here as a vote of confidence sort of became a reality. So I do remember distinctly actually going with him to Uncle QW's home to talk about this. Obviously, I was just an observer, but that's sort of how it got started. And again, I think it was very much, the idea that we should build bridges, that, despite Hong Kong returning to China, that it was still an exciting place that Americans should learn about, which was the original mission of the Asia Society.
What would he have made upon seeing the revitalized site? I mean, he was also familiar with Kennedy Road. He unfortunately did not live to see it, but what do you think he would have thought if he could see this site?
I think he would be tremendously pleased. As you know, he was an avid antique collector, so any type of restoration, I'm sure he would be very interested and pleased about. I guess particularly with, in terms of, from what I remember, this is the first true effort for a building in Hong Kong of this scale to be renovated and restored. I think a lot is now certainly talked about the police headquarters, but this was done 20 years ago, right before anybody considered these kinds of huge restorations.
And what foresight, because you're right, Central Police Station just opened a few years ago, PMQ was also after us, and all of these buildings, in fact, somebody said we were the kind of the guinea pig. The government, some of the policies that are used has now been passed on, and we've shared that knowledge, so we're really excited. But for me, what I found interesting was when you sent me the email about the Irene Doe show. I did not know. It was later on I learned your father's
painting was.
your father was an early collector of many of these Hong Kong artists, like Irene and others, and he hung some of these artwork in the hotel, which we've seen photos. I've subsequently seen photos of it from other, and so it's to see Irene's, and again, I not being from Hong Kong, I was not familiar with her work, and she was the third, we had the Fan Zhaolin, Pan Yuliang, and then Irene Zhou, and her work was just, you know, to see it in a gallery was just really phenomenal. And but then to see some of her earlier work hung in you know the hotel where your father knew her. That's what another thing I found interesting is that he knew some of these artists, and he maybe not have been a collector or something, kind of not like the collector, but he patronized, he helped Hong Kong's early artists, and these are like homegrown Hong Kong artists that he supported, and I'm really grateful. That's why if he could see it, I'm sure he would be proud. But we're getting toward the end. The reason we're celebrating the past 30 years, 1990 till now, is to look backward, but we also want to look forward. And so what do you see for Asia Society Hong Kong in the next 30 years?
So the Asia Society was originally established in the United States to teach Americans about Asia. Since the Asia Society Hong Kong Center has been established, the mission of Asia Society has pivoted a little bit to teach Asians about other Asians. But in today's world, I think it's very important to try to revisit the original mission of teaching Americans about Asia, particularly China, as I also mentioned in my remarks, given the geopolitical situation and the rhetoric that seems to overshadow reality. So I'm hoping in the next 30 years that, again, reflecting my remarks, that Asia Society continues to build bridges, and as my son said, not walls.
Thank you, Chien. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us, and we look forward to the next 30 years.
Absolutely.
Thank you for identifying the site, being there, and we really look forward to. There's going to be challenges like COVID this year, but I think the solid foundation was laid by yourself, your father, by Sir QW, by the people we're going to honor for the gala. So thank you.
Oh no, you're welcome.